Hi, I'm Tim Clemmer from EEI, and today's case study is a financial institution that came to us needing to stabilize their core systems and help define their future state. So, a large, well-known financial institution had a number of significant problems. Their core money movement systems were crashing with great regularity and quite predictable. They had tens of millions of users or clients, and they were all, not all of them, but most of them were on direct deposit paydays. And so typically their greatest volume was on the 15th and the 30th of the month. And that's when everybody got on to pay their bills and to do funds transfer. And they would go down on those days. And it could be anywhere from 15 minutes to 5 hours, but they were going down. There's growing frustration from the client base. Their call center, they had tens of thousands of people working their call center, and that had to grow to handle all the calls. And they were getting a negative Twitter feed, negative commentary on their Twitter feed. Senior management also was concerned with all of these breakdowns that they weren't going to be able to scale with their unexpected growth. Despite themselves, they were incredibly successful, and they were good. They're a good bank. Just happened that they had these outages. So we started to work with them on this, and then they said, "Look, there's a couple other things we want you to look at the same time. We're trying to consolidate from 3 data centers to 2. IT has said that our database technology is an obstacle to consolidation. We are on DB2. Check that out, and because we know that you guys know DB2. And the other thing was, look, we're like everybody else. We've got a lot of legacy stuff, and we've got a lot of new stuff, and never the twain shall meet. We're having a real problem getting these things to work with each other. How do we move forward? Talk to us. Show us a way forward. So obviously the challenge broke into 3 distinct efforts. Let's solve for the system crashes and failures. And that really meant doing some root cause analysis, database analysis, look at the design, the technique, the configuration, do a microservice architectural review. Let's look at their data center consolidation plan. Let's see if indeed DB2 is a culprit or if there are other culprits, and then show them a way forward. And we had some people on staff that have actually led data consolidation efforts and knew how to make active work in this regard with DB2. So we knew exactly that it can happen, just see how to make it happen. And then the last thing was to plot out a target state future. So I just want to step back one moment here and say, kind of toot our own horn, that we have an extensive history of successfully remediating problem overnight batch systems and underperforming batch systems. Within a couple of weeks, we can usually get in there and show you um, where it is that you've got problematic dependencies, long-running processes, and the best ways to make those long-running processes come down to minutes or milliseconds, whatever it is. So we have a long history doing this, and this is sort of falls right within our bailiwick to kind of come in and look at system failures and fix them. So So we also know financial services very well. And very quickly, we got to a couple of the core issues. So with the money movement systems, this core system that was failing right and left, it was originally designed and written for funds transfer. Bill payment a year or two later was added in, just shoved into the design. And a couple of years after that, peer-to-peer was added. And that was the problem. They didn't change the design to fit bill payment and peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer really created all sorts of issues for them that no one had anticipated. So I'm going to tell you exactly what the issue was, that funds transfer and bill pay to a large extent are working with bank accounts. And bank accounts, I can correctly assume, have a routing number, a bank routing number, and an account number. And I can use those as keys for uniqueness in an account table. When I try to shove peer-to-peer account numbers into that table, all hell breaks loose. Peer-to-peer, at least their peer-to-peer partner that they were using, used email addresses. And so what they did was they said, well, I can't put an email address into the routing number or the bank account number because it won't fit and it's the wrong format. So I'll just put it into this third account number. And I forget what the field was, but it was an account description or name or something. And so they put it there. Well, now what happens is I've now got millions of peer-to-peer accounts with null routing numbers and null account numbers. And I don't have uniqueness anymore in my table because I got a million rows with the same null account and routing number. So this was causing all sorts of havoc with their stored procs. That's finding number one, major finding number one. Finding number two was they were absolutely correct. IT was right that DB2 was a blocker for data center consolidation, but they were right for the wrong reasons. The reason it was a blocker was they were on an older version of DB2. If they moved up, and they were about 2 or 3 versions behind, if they moved up to the new version and changed some configuration patterns and also changed their indexes, the indexes they were using were not compatible with an active-active requirements. So new configuration patterns, new upgrade indexes, they could actually go and use DB2 active-active. Problem number two. Lastly, microservice architecture. Now we were looking in this just for compatibility and also kind of thinking of in terms of future state. And we found out very quickly that this was a homegrown system. And I will say this was a great client, a smart client, and this was a client that was all in for the customer. I mean, they were always trying to do right by their customers, but they had done what a lot of other people have done in the past. There wasn't something available at the time, so they built their own. There was no MuleSoft or Apogee around the time, or it was just, they were just hitting their stride. Build their own, over-architected, made it complicated. So for example, a simple funds transfer, rather than taking half a dozen to a dozen services and maybe 15 to 20 steps, 30 services, 60 plus steps, way over-architected. So as a result, this is something that was not going to be able to scale, and it was very difficult to update. So we needed to make some recommendations there. Now, when we're solving for our clients, we take the client into account. We're looking for an optimal solution for them. It's not a one size fits all. It's not, hey, go get MuleSoft or Kubernetes and Kafka and you're going to be fine. We want to get to the next step and we want to match everything to the client. So what's their appetite for change? What's their culture? Are they willing to go with new methodologies, new software? And what's their solution for needing new skill sets if they don't have them in-house? Do they go out and buy them, or do they train their own people? Because that kind of a decision will show you how well new technologies are going to get adopted in-house. if you turn around and say, oh, I've got to train some people, and you find the right people and you train them, that you're usually going to get better adoption in-house down the road. So we want to take all of these different dimensions into account when we're suggesting solutions for a client. Because the last thing you want to do is recommend a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz to the Amish. It's just not going to happen. So we also want to take into account what are the solutions that are needed? What are the problems that we're trying to solve? Yes, we're going to fix what's broken, but what's also out there that's critical and important. So the client was concerned with scaling and to be able to handle new processes, new services, new users. They were also very concerned with reputational risk. This was not happy. They were not happy that their call center was getting overwhelmed with calls, uh, that their Twitter feed was going, up in smoke with just bad comments. They wanted to they wanted to address reputational risk and eliminate failure. And they wanted to reduce. So this was an interesting problem. Increase your monitoring functionality and capabilities and reduce my support personnel. They were out of whack with developers versus support. And they had stolen a lot of their developers and pushed them into support just because of all of the issues that they were having. So move their support personnel back into development and at the same time increase their monitoring capabilities. So when we come up with a solution, we're going to center around, and for this guy, we needed to center around simplifying the overcomplicated, right? We had to we looked at their database. It was overly complicated, overly complex. There was a lot that could be denormalized and maintain a lot of data integrity. Fix what's broken. But now also, look, there was no need to move to an Oracle or a Mongo or a Hadoop or whatever, and and migrate your data over. Just leverage newer versions of existing technology. It was huge, and replace homegrown. That'll let them scale, and also since they had their own uh, software delivery mechanisms, we showed them there's a better, more modern way to do software delivery that would allow you, this is DevOps, rather than stay on a quarterly and sort of semi bi-monthly uh, delivery to production, you could start going daily if you wanted, or weekly, but start simple and work your way up. So what was the solution? First, reconfigure the database. Upgrade to a new version, leverage the new capabilities, restructure your core indexes so that we could use active-active. And the restructuring also eliminated all these millions of rows in several tables or in retrievals for the stored procs. Redesigned core tables, reduce some of this intense normalization. If you think about it, a terrible example, but if I wanted to say, which state do you live in? I had 50 columns in there that were all yes, no, and each column was a state, and I'd put a yes for New York and 49 no's. You don't have to do that. Just have one column that is the state with the value of the state. So I'm not saying that's how they did it, but it's a poor example of the sort of over normalization that can happen. We reduced and eliminated a number of logging services that they had and leveraged database functionality and logging capabilities. We built a proof of concept to demonstrate that active-active can work in their data center uh, using new configuration settings, the updated indexes, and redesigned tables. And it was activated with just an imperceptible lag. I think it was like 3 milliseconds or something. And then we recommended some viable software solutions for releases to production, and also replacing their homegrown infrastructure with Kubernetes and Kafka. And what I'll say here is I'll give them credit. They were already kind of going down that should we go with Kubernetes and Kafka? We think that's the right approach. And where we stepped in was we showed them a better way of defining Kafka topics, which was they were going down the path of overcomplicating it. And there were ways to do it with we just simplify the topics. So the business value, modernizing the existing database technology, remove the need to and the expense of getting new technology in-house, migrating the data, no pain. We're able to increase the database capacity and performance using existing infrastructures, save them lots of money, revamp the indexes, the configuration, and stored procs. This allowed them, once they saw that it was possible and they could go down this path and do it, they were able to bring in the data center consolidation 9 months earlier. And all of this work totally eliminated their monthly production failures. We outlined a money movement target state, which was also the basis for everything else moving to this target state. It became the target state for the entire institution and all their systems. And it met all of senior management's requirements for business, skills, location, cost, etc. The end result, the money movement system, once our changes were deployed, consistently met or exceeded their SLAs. Uh, Starting day one, they were absolutely actually able to move their SLAs up a couple of hours. They had a 50% reduction in user complaints in their first 2 months. They reduced their budget or their costs by $20 to $25 million in infrastructure because they were able to get rid of that third data center 9 months early. And the really nice little piece was they had a 15% boost in positive Twitter comments within the first 45 days. So there was another example of how we were able to come in, step in, and prove our worth to a financial institution. If you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to reach out to Bill, Rita, or myself. Thanks for listening, and I hope this proved to be of value. Have a great day.